Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. And we have a few great stories for you tonight because there's a lot of fighting back going on out there in the culture war. You're not thinking that there is because the mainstream media is not going to cover it, but there is. And the resistance is happening, and it's a great, great thing. We're on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Our live chat room, the only social media that's worth socializing in, is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please remember, follow Joe and I on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you see us on social media. Like, subscribe, share. Do that for us, please. It'll take you 2 seconds to hit a like, hit a subscribe, or a share. That helps us with that. If you want to support us financially, drop a couple bucks at patreon.com/frontline with Joe and Joe. And also Veritas Catholic Network. We recommend to download their app. Joe and I have a Sunday afternoon radio interview show and at Veritas Catholic Network, where you could download the app and you could listen to us on their podcast. Having said all that, I'm excited, Joe Resinello. I'm excited, all right? And I'm going to tell you why. Fighting back against big abortion, fighting back against big education, fighting back against bogus critical race theory, fighting back against liberal smugness, fighting, mostly by doing what, Joe Resinello? Organizing, creating awareness, right? That's a real liberal word, isn't it? Awareness. We all need to be aware. Conservatives need to be aware too, okay? So we're going to get into all these stories. And as always, we try to find some examples of situations that maybe have not been fought back against yet. But nonetheless, this is a hopeful show because it shows that regular Americans, kitchen table Americans, that's what Joe and I are at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. That's what we are. Everyday guys who are looking at the landscape saying, this is a lot of BS and we need to do something about it. With that, I'm handing it over to Joe.
So let's begin with the prayer. We always begin with the prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise on our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So where we headed, Joe? Because like I said, there's a few good places to start. Maybe they all been listening to the front line with Joe and Joe. They should be.
So we're going to start with Lebanon, Ohio.
I love Lebanon. Ohio. Never been there. Maybe you never get there in my life. I love the joint.
And the story is coming from Life News. Basically, the Ohio City Council in Lebanon, a member resigned in protest this week when her fellow board members passed a pro-life sanctuary for the unborn. So basically, it's going to become like a sanctuary city for the unborn. Let's get a little background on it. Lebanon became the first city in Ohio and the 29th city in the nation to pass an enforceable ordinance outlawing abortion with its city limits. The vote was unanimous after that, a board member, Christy Watt, resigned. She basically said, this limits options for health care for women. So she had to resign. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of glad that she resigned, to be truthful with you. But I also find it kind of interesting that a city can do this. And I also think, Joe, it's going to go to the Supreme Court.
It will. And will. This is where the case is. Look, if Donald Trump did anything good amongst anything, we should at least think that we have a more conservative judiciary. All right. Lots and lots and lots of judges, hundreds of judges, and a supposedly conservative Supreme Court. Now, we spoke about it with Father Imperato, okay? If you can't get this right, conservative legal minds in America on the Supreme Court, ACB, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, if you can't get this right, there is no conservative legal movement in America. For what reason should I be conservative? For business reasons? You know what I mean? For economic reasons? If you can't get the right to life correct. So my point is, this is where it starts. I think you're right. This is where it starts. It starts at the grassroots level where cities turn. Look, let me ask you this. Do cities not have zoning laws?
Sure.
All cities have zoning laws, okay? You have a zoning board. You can't just go and build a house or open a business without going down to City Hall. and applying for a license to open up your business. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Planned Parenthood's a business. They're a business. And if they go down to Lebanon, Ohio's zoning board office and say, we want to apply for to be zoned in Lebanon, Ohio, what's your business? We provide abortions. Sorry, we don't allow abortions. Go to the next town. That's exactly the way it should work. And the Supreme Court may, on the issue of federalism, turn around and say a city's got a right to do that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I hate to say it. I don't think it's going to fly.
You're such an optimist.
But no, but I don't think from the Supreme Court, like, honestly, because it is law. Like, there is certain things, like, I do think that the case that's going there about, what is it? How many weeks? 18 weeks or something.
Oh, 50. Oh, the 15-week Tennessee.
No, in Mississippi. The one in Mississippi that we.
Yeah. Yes. It's 15-week
abortion. I think that has
ban.
a shot because there's science behind it, and basically you could potentially argue that there is life. But the problem with this is it's similar to what happened in Texas. I'm just thinking of it purely from a legal perspective.
Sure.
We all know where we all stand. But from a legal perspective, I don't know if it has legs.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember in Texas about driving to abortion clinics?
Right. And the court struck it down.
Correct.
Right.
It's similar to that because it's almost like I'll play devil's advocate. Say like with guns. Say somebody in Portland, Oregon said, you can have no guns.
Mm-hmm.
And they passed it.
Right.
Well, then they would say, well, there's a Second Amendment. Sorry. Well, there's court, like Roe is still on the book. So I don't now.
But isn't that the crux of the matter then? Then is it going to be like for us, obviously abortion comes down to banning this atrocious act. But having said that, from a conservative, legal and political point of view, then isn't it about overturning Roe versus Wade? And at least in this case, Joe Resinello, the Supreme Court saying, no, if you're a city, you could basically say we don't want abortion in our city, which would effectively overturn Roe versus Wade. So the question is then going to be, are they willing to at least do that? Let's say willing to say, like you mentioned, you're right about the 15-week abortion ban. Okay, there's some science behind it, but a city should be, ideally, I know you agree with me, they should be able to say, we don't want abortion at all. And if Roe is overturned, then that city will be allowed to do that. That'll be the question.
Yeah,
that in my view,
it'll be interesting.
And I agree with you. I know that what you're saying. This is a matter of the cities just saying no abortions in our city.
I like it. Let me go on record as saying I like it. I think it's a good, and I think what we have to see, and this is something that we talked about before, Joe, is conservative states have to band together. But there is federal law. And I don't know if I'm just being like straight up, like, right. I don't know if it'll have legs.
You're being a realist. You're being a realist.
But it's a good step. I think it's a good step, to be honest with you. And listen, these are the type of things you talk about fighting back. This is what people have to do. These are people, listen, it's gone too far. The abortion issue has gone too far. I remember talking about what's her name? Meghan McCain.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
She said 85%. I mean, she's on a very liberal show. She's quote unquote conservative, but she said 85% of America is against third trimester abortion. And here's another thing. They always talk about science. Well, the science is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And it's a child. There's no other way. I've said this on another show. My wife's pregnant. We just got some sonograms. It's a child. The recent sonogram basically, and she's like only in her second trimester. You could legally kill that child. The nurse was saying that the child was given a thumbs up, and the child was sitting like this. So I mean, like, you're not going to tell me that that's not a person. It's gone beyond just like it's a glob of cells. It's this. It's not that anymore. The science is too advanced. It's in your face. Do you think in your mind, while we're discussing this here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, do you think, Joe Resinello, it's coming down now to the idea that eventually because everything you said is spot on about the science and everything else, okay? You don't need God to know that that's a human life that's in the womb from the moment of conception. Do you think in your mind their attitude now, it seems to me, is we don't care whether it's a human life. We want the right to kill that human life. That seems to me, yes,
the attitude.
They've said everything but that.
But that's where they're.
But that's
what they're leaving
I don't
themselves.
even, right. And eventually there are going to be more cases. I think I actually think it has a shot, the Mississippi case. I actually do.
Mm-hmm.
This one I'm not as confident with. Now, will abortion ever be banned legally? I'll be honest with you. I'm a naysayer. I don't think the country will do it because of casual sex. And that's not just conservatives have casual sex.
Yeah.
Don't think they don't. Like, the only people who don't do that, I'll be honest with you, it's such a small remnant of small group of Catholics, small group of Jews, and that's it.
Right.
And when you're talking about like changing the behavior, I think that will only take a biblical act. That's just my opinion.
I think it's sad. It's sad. I think you're spot on. Okay. Because I think if you told a lot of conservatives, we want to ban abortion outright, and I'm talking about pro-life conservatives, they may say, hold it. And why? Because of what you said. They too, because whether they'll admit it or not, they're victims of the sexual liberation movement of the 1960s, of the sexual revolution of the 1960s. Conservatives are victims of it too. They want their free sex too, and they want that out. Now, they might turn around and say, yeah, but I'm only for abortion in the first trimester. And let's face it, there's a lot of people that call themselves conservative in this country that believe that. Don't worry. If they put it like this, Joe, pro-life conservatives in America, you got a better shot of them getting on board with the ban abortions after the first trimester than to jump on board the Frontline with Joe and Joe solution, which is to be ban abortions altogether. Conservatives, I think, would be split, and a lot of them would go with no, we just want to ban it after the first trimester. And that, in my view, that is what's going to piss God off if there's an accommodation on abortion. Well,
I think it's already, God is already, I mean, think about it. This has gone on since 1973.
Right.
I mean, so many children. And if you want to talk about it globally, that's why it will end. All these things end. Like today is the, what's it called? Recently, we were talking about Joan of Arc.
Mm-hmm.
Joan of Arc was a woman, and she led an army at 17. I believe France was under the thumb of England for 100 years, I believe. And God used a peasant who was illiterate and overturned a superpower. This has happened before. It happened in Egypt with the Jews. This is historic. And Joan of Arc also is a historic figure. Why do I bring those two situations up? Abortion will change too.
Yeah.
God is very patient with people. He always is with people. And eventually, I don't know how, but it will be through something that is almost like he'll use something like the weak, like Joan of Arc. She was a peasant girl, who he used, David and Goliath.
Right.
You know
well, there is the perfect example, David and Goliath.
Moses, to lead the Jews out of bondage. He will do the same thing.
I'll tell you what,
no doubt in my mind.
We need a David in this country because this crop of evil people in America, they make the Philistines look like a bunch of choir boys. Okay. No, so and they were powerful, let's face it. And yeah, it's not an allegorical story. Okay. Goliath was huge and David was a 98-pound weakling. Okay. And God made it where the rock hit Goliath right in his face and David cut his head off and they defeated the Philistines after that. That's right. For all those people say, well, those are just stories. No, David existed and he killed Goliath because God told him to. Very simple, okay? And then for a greater purpose. Again, the Philistines were attacking Israel, okay? And the Israelites were at war with the Philistines, okay? Well, we're in a culture war right now, and the main battlefield is abortion. There's others. We know that. That's why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe. There are others. However, all right, abortion is the main battlefield. And they are the Philistines, and they're big and powerful like Goliath. And maybe God raises up a couple of 98-pound weaklings, not quite 98 pounds like Joe and Joe, and maybe we sling a few rocks at Planned Parenthood.
David had 5 rocks. He only used one.
And he only used one.
He only needed one.
What upsets me more than anything, Joe Ressinello, is the attitude. Now you got to catch this stuff, okay? This woman, okay, let me be charitable. This city council member, you know what she said? This is what I don't get. At least be honest about what it is you're trying to protect, which is the slaughter of innocent human beings. That's what it is. Whether you want to admit it or not, you really should, and just be honest that you just want to keep it legal so you can go out and screw anybody you want. But here's what she said. She said, as Joe mentioned earlier, she criticized the ordinance in Lebanon by claiming it, quote, limits people's options to medical care. We know that that's nonsense. It's not medical care when the result is the death of a human being. Okay. So we know medical care has got nothing to do with it. But then listen to what she said, quote, as a respectable, decent human being, I'm holding back. I'm holding back the food I ate earlier today. Okay. As a respectable, decent human being, I can no longer allow my name to be associated with the Lebanon City Council. Why, you disgusting woman. What they did was respectable and decent. What the city council did was respectable and decent. And for you to say that you're respectable and decent when you resign because you just want to keep baby killing legal in the city of Lebanon, and the town said, no, we are actually doing the decent and moral thing. We're banning it within the city. But I was asking more of a question, Joe Russell. You see their attitude? They're the decent, good people because they want to give women access to medical care that results in the death of their unborn human being.
Well, it's always the
unborn child.
The language. I mean, medical care is the language used. I mean, people get lost in their own craziness. And frankly, sin is the result of sight. You don't see when you have sin. Sin clouds your vision. Mm-hmm. And I mean, listen, I'm a sinner. But with that said, I mean, I do live in a state of grace because I do go to confession. That doesn't make me a saint. But what it does make me do is see. And I mean, impediments to sight, a lot of things, you know, there's a saying, a good priest said this once. He said, like, a lot of people have a lot of issues with the Catholic Church, but under all their issues, there's one issue that they're not saying and they're not communicating. And it could be the fact that they had an abortion and they can't get themselves to say that they killed a child. So they're vocal. I'm not saying that woman, it happened, but there's a lot of things behind people, how they behave, you know, like, you know, that's one thing about like you take, like, say from a Catholic perspective, the Blessed Mother, pure. Someone explained to me, it's like looking into a stream, a pure stream. There's no masks. People put on masks. I mean, when you deal with children don't have that. But as people get older, they put on masks. They're not themselves. You know, that there's always that. Are you real? Oh, that's real. Very few people are real. I hate to say it. And these type of conversations, when people say medical, blah, 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 there's just a mask. It's sad. Right. It's no way to live, but that's how the world is. And that's how adults operate.
Yeah. I mean, would you think in your mind, I think that all these things, what they call it, women's right to choose, Supreme Court precedent, access to health care, access to medical care, reproductive rights, that's all the jargon that they use to convince themselves that what they're doing is actually good and respectable and decent. This woman, this councilwoman Wyatt, she said, as a respectable, decent person, I have to resign from the board because they actually want to save babies and I want to kill them. But she's not going to say that. And the reason why I bring it up is because she's convincing herself using all the phrases that you pointed out, that we've all heard, all you good people out there on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. We've heard it all before. And they say it to make themselves feel better. That's because they want to think, because they can't, as you said, Joe, they can't look themselves in the mirror because they'd have to come to grips with the fact that what they're doing is child slaughter.
Well, what it is change. You know, like, to come to grips with certain truths requires a physical change of the person. That's anything, you know, like to come to grips with a truth. Like, say, I'll use an example. You're stealing at work. You're stealing. People don't look at it that, oh, it's just business. Oh, it's just this. But they know that if they stop, well, they can't live a certain lifestyle because they don't get that money.
Right.
So they continue to do it. My point is, it's change that people are not willing to do. And that's why when people have issues with Christ or issues with the Catholic Church, they're not, even people within the church, They're not willing to change.
Let's take a break just for a second. I want to pick up on that. It's a great thing to talk about. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, already way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, we're having a push at the Crusade channel. Go to crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, so that for the next 90 days, from the time that goes 24/7, you're going to get the Crusade channel, Mike Church, and the rest of it. And that's in an attempt to convince you that what you need to do is subscribe to the Crusade channel. Joe and I do not get anything for that. We love the channel. That's why we support it. We encourage you to go to listen free. Click the button at crusadechannel.com, okay? And let's become a subscriber to the Crusade channel. In the meantime, we got a lot more to talk about, so stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Joe Resinello, you hit the nail on the head. Is that what is required, okay, is sight. You have to open your eyes, whether you open them yourself or God opens them for you, but you have to have a willingness. It's one thing to see, but then it's another thing to make that step and to change. That is always the problem. Always the problem. I think in all of human history, the refusal to change. I don't care who you're talking about.
It's me.
All of us don't. All of us have our thing that we don't want to put down. Okay, we all have that. Nobody's judging the difficulty in changing one's life. But I will say this, okay, and I could only speak for Joe and myself. Okay. Our journeys started at different times in our lives. However, we did have enough, by the grace of God, sense to say, I need to change and continue and begin the process of changing. People need to begin that, Joe. They need their eyes open. They need the scales to fall from their eyes, particularly on the abortion issue.
Well,
Joe,
I could speak,
particularly on this.
I mean, I could speak for myself with regard, the abortion, but also just in terms of like my own walk with truth and with Christ. And as a Catholic, I can remember, I've used this example on the show. I was single. I didn't get married till I was 43. And I was starting to make a little bit of money, and I was on my own. And I had a pull to tithe, and I wouldn't do it for a while. It was hard to do that, to get myself to do it. But then I finally did. Another thing that was difficult, you talk about change, was to be chaste. I mean, if you are not married, you're not supposed to have sex. That's a teaching of Christianity. It's a teaching of Christianity.
Nowadays,
I'm just being honest with you. And like that was another thing that was, if you want to accept this, that's something you have to change.
Right.
Now, it's the same thing. We can go on and on and on. In marriages, like to contracept, if you're Catholic, that's not a teaching of the Catholic Church, but people rationalize things. My point is this, it goes with this woman. People, if we're going to be open to God, we have to be open to changing and doing things God's way. It's the way, and if you want to follow truth, it's not your truth that counts. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue. And that's sometimes, though, when you have to see people through their own lens. That's what it is. Like sometimes we lose sight of that. It almost becomes a tug of war between me and this person. Actually, what it is, you have to see the person through that lens. That's how God sees them, actually, yeah. Joe. Mm-hmm.
No, it's true. It's true. And that's what we pray for. I mean, I know that you do it. I do it. I hope all of you out there do. One of the things I believe, I know that I'm supposed to do as someone who wants to be a good Catholic, okay, and be a loving disciple of Christ, is I pray for my own continued conversion, because none of us are going to get there until we die, okay? Most of us, when we're saved, are going to end up in purgatory, okay? So nobody's perfect, but for my wife and myself, I pray for our continued conversion, and I pray for others to be converted. I don't just pray for Catholics, I pray for all people. And who do you think I'm praying for so many times? People who have their eyes closed on this issue of abortion. That I could talk to Joe Resinello, I could talk to somebody about anything. You want to sit down at the table, talk about immigration? Let's sit down. You want to sit down, you want to talk about taxes in the economy? Let's sit down. You want to talk about trade and workers' rights? Let's sit down. On abortion, I'm not sitting down with you. And I pray for those people that at least as Americans, we can maybe come to some sort of an agreement on that. Abortion has to go. It has to go. Then maybe we could talk about other things, but that requires the change you're talking about. And you want to know what? That requires prayer. That requires prayer. And let me say, if you think this is a political and cultural commentary show that we do here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, we're always going to talk about prayer because ultimately we have our parts to play, but we got to ask God for his help. And that's the truth. So you're at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Priscillo, Joe Resinello. We are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember to get in the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. So now that was a good example, I thought, of people fighting back. All right. You got the liberals want sanctuary cities for immigrants, right? Illegal immigrants can't go in there and arrest them, can't deport them. Well, Lebanon, Ohio, and 28 other towns in America want to do the same for the unborn. If you're an unborn child in any one of those 29 towns, you cannot be killed. Joe Resinello, where are we headed?
Well, we're going to go to Scottsdale, Arizona. This one's coming out of Gateway Pundit, and they announced a coalition to recruit, train, and mobilize parent activists while the school board hides. This is an interesting conversation. Amy Carney, this is a person who is outspoken in Scottsdale. She said she led a charge and spoke on behalf of the Scottsdale parents. She said this: "We've been touted as a belligerent mob, and many untrue narratives have been spread over the last several years. So we're here
I think days.
Correct. So we're here to tell you who we really are. In reality, we are parents, grandparents, community members, tax-paying citizens who care about education and how our kids are being educated or not being educated. Parents know their children best, and we need more parents on school boards that will respect and protect our parental rights, all while offering our children a quality education without tainted politics and bias. Together, we parents are a strong voice, and we must unite to reclaim our schools by replacing unresponsive school board members." Now, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine who his kid is in high school, and he was basically saying, and he's right, if you're teaching a subject, say it's English in high school, junior year English, the student should not know. Like if I was the principal in a public school, I don't want that student to know whether you're conservative or whether you're liberal.
Mm-hmm.
Just teach your subject.
Right.
It's not your job to be an activist in a classroom. Teach your subject. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are getting fed up. Like we talked about this a little bit last week. It's gone too far. They're pulling in other people that would not be involved. Like there are people who are political. You have pundits out there and you have shows. And then there are indifferent people. I'll be honest with you. A lot of Americans, sadly, are just indifferent. Mm-hmm. But it's getting too crazy. And regular people like these people on a school board are almost like, listen, I'm not having this. I am not having this. I don't want my kid to be a part of it. I'm sorry. And I actually think it's Democrats and Republicans, Joe. Mm-hmm. I think it's across the board, like normal people who function in life. What do I mean by that? They get up every day and go to work. They pay their bills. They take care of their kids. They don't necessarily have to be religious. These are people who are just like, listen, I am not having this. You're not going to tell my kid that it's okay for my son to have anal sex. I'm sorry.
Now they didn't say that in the article, but that's one of the things that they're referring to, because if you listen to what Joe said a minute ago, is they're fighting. They, as parents, have the most input as to what their kids are taught and what their kids are not being taught. Nowadays, I mean, we've covered this on the show at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We've covered it. Now, if you teach, it's A-OK. Thumbs up in the air, everybody. It's A-OK to teach a 5-year-old boy that having anal sex is just dandy, okay? But if you teach that same 5-year-old that 2 + 2 = 4, you're a white supremacist. This is the world we live in? Are you serious? I'm not joking either. We covered it. That if you look for the correct answer, to a math problem, something as simple as 2 + 2, it's an example of the patriarchy, and you are a white supremacist. So teaching math, which is objective, it's either right or wrong. Okay.
It's true.
Teaching math, okay, is a no-no. Teaching sodomy to little children or any kids, that's just A-okay. That is the filth that we're dealing with. That's what Amy Carney, thumbs up to Amy Carney out in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's what Amy Carney's fighting against. That's what those parents did. But look at Joe Rossinello. I want you to address this. What about the cowardice on the part of the school board? They ran. They ran for the hills. They went and hid because they knew these parents were coming.
Well, people have to step up. I'll tell you a little story that happened this week. You don't even know this. A deacon friend of mine went to a town council meeting, and he wanted a Choose Life flag to be flown in the town that I grew up in. So he asked me to go and speak. It was virtual. So he went and he proposed it. And then I supported him in that. And I basically spoke as well. And then also a Protestant pastor did as well. And I think he's going to get it. You see, that's the type of stuff that has to happen. Yep. People have to step up, and you do it respectfully. And to be completely honest with you, how I angled my conversation in that, and he was very respectful, my friend Ray, who's a deacon, I basically said, well, listen, last June, this town had a Black Lives Matter rally. And Black Lives do matter, because Black children are being aborted at a rate, this is what I said, are being aborted at a rate higher than any other children in America. Why is it that Planned Parenthood is their clinics, 85% of them are in walking distance from all minority. I went through a whole diatribe.
I love it.
When I was done, I said, anyone have any comments or concerns?
Crickets.
Nothing. And then the Protestant pastor spoke, and I think their flag is going to fly. So my point
What did you do, Joe Rossinello? What you did is you presented them with unassailable. Let's see, that's our new phrase around here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Unassailable logic. What did Joe say to these people that caused them to not be able to respond? Unassailable logic. You guys allowed a Black Lives Matter flag to fly. Okay,
no, they had a rally.
A rally, and we want to fly a pro-life flag. Okay. And we're going to fly that flag. And Black lives do matter, because Black babies are being more aborted at higher rates than white babies. If I was a liberal sitting on a school board, or I was somebody listening to that, or if I was me, I would be like, I really can't argue with this guy. Let him fly the flag. It's called unassailable logic, Joe Rossinello. That's what we do here.
That's what you have to do. You could do it. I was very respectful. But to be honest with you, our comments, we meant business, meaning like I was like, I was open for comments. If you wanted to challenge me on it, go for it. Challenge me on it. But I'm going to have the discussion. If you do that, I'll be honest with you, I think you'll win the day in a lot of cases, because it's common sense. Mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff is just straight up and down common sense. And again, they've just overplayed their hand. A lot of this stuff that's being taught in schools, again, it's indifferent people. It's not necessarily political people. It's people, frankly, a lot of them, they don't even go to church. They don't even, they may believe in a God, but they're not even religious. But it's so insane that they're basically just like, I can't have this.
Right. And they're saying, I can't be indifferent anymore. I got to get in there.
And that's why, I'll be honest with you, we're going to talk a little bit about that as the show moves on. Carville.
James Carville. Yes.
Has commented on it.
Crazy Cajun, exactly. James Carville.
Because the thing is, this is what happened in England. We talked about this last week. The Labour Party got crushed because of the crazy woke nonsense that went on in that party. They lost the blue collar roots of their party, the people who are not on board. And they basically left them and voted them out, and they got crushed. I actually think if they don't step carefully, and Carville, he basically comments on this, and we're going to touch on this in a little bit. He's basically saying, like, guys, you're not appealing. He calls it faculty jargon. Your faculty jargon isn't relating to the same people in your party. You better cut it out. And he's right. I'm telling you, and I was actually impressed that he actually said it.
Well,
I really am.
Look, the guy nauseates me, but he does say some fair things sometimes. So like we'll give him enough credit for that. But that's what's happening here because of the elitist attitude. All right, of in this case that Amy Carney went up against and others went up against school board members, or in Lebanon, Ohio, saying that, look, you want to kill babies over in that town, go kill babies in that town. You're not doing it in our town. It's resisting this Carville, and we're going to get into it, this smugness, this looking down your nose at people. You're going to do what we tell you to do. That's the important part here is you have no more insight into life than I do. And if you can't provide solid arguments for those things you want to see, then obviously what you have is really bad ideas. And that's what we're doing here. We are targeting and defeating bad ideas. We get a lot of them in the chat room that say, like, somebody wants to say that that the life doesn't, or saying that life begins at conception is not scientific. What are you talking about? It's a biological fact. That's a statement of science, Joe Rossinello. That's no matter where you are on abortion, over 92% of the world's biologists agree that life begins at conception. But you see, we have to hammer this stuff home and get it out there. So we destroy their elitism and we prevent them from telling us what to do. In the case of Amy Carney, the school board left. They walked out, these cowards. They walked out. They didn't want to confront this. What Joe did this week, I didn't know this story. What Joe did this week, go there and tell them right to their face. Joe basically told them what he says on the front line with Joe and Joe all the time, which I think is a very beautiful thing. All right. That more black babies are killed in abortion than white babies. Because swish that around in your mouth a little bit.
37% of all children murdered in the womb are black, and they only African Americans only make up 13% of the American population. Isn't that systemic racism?
Yeah.
Why isn't that discussed? So, like, it's selective,
right?
It's selective. I can remember Father Karapi said, like, talking about the abortion issue, and he said, "I don't care who it is." And, he was a pretty smart guy, but I don't even think it matters. He's like, I don't care who it is, pick whoever it is. They won't last 10 minutes with me with regard to discussing this topic. And it's the same thing with anything else. I got news for you. If you speak the truth is like a lion. It doesn't matter whose mouth it comes out of. It will defend itself. As Joe said, it's unassailable. It really is. The hard part is just getting it out of your mouth. But if you do, I'm telling you, it's unassailable. It really is. And this is what people have to do. And I'll be truthful with you. I think with a lot of this stuff, because it's not even gray. Like, we could talk about, you could talk about like immigration. Mm-hmm. You could have a different opinion. One person could say, I want merit-based immigration. Another person might say, I don't want merit-based immigration. That's a valid disagreement.
It falls under prudential
and you
judgment.
Can have a conversation.
Right. You could have a discussion because it falls under prudential judgment. It is not inherently evil to say I want a border wall, and it's not inherently evil to say I don't want a border wall. Okay. It's a matter of prudential judgment. Like Joe said, you could talk about it. You cannot talk about abortion. But even, you don't get that right, you don't get anything else right.
But even like with some other things that, like, because even with abortion, sadly, a lot of people, it's palatable because, again, it comes down to sex. And that's not even political. Believe me, the Republicans aren't, if you ask me, they're not going to go nuts over
Joe, I got to cut you off. What you just said, I'm going to just double down on that. If you deny that, your head's in the sand. If you can at least be honest and say, you know what? Yeah, I want to go out and screw everything in sight. That's why I want to make sure I have the out of abortion. Joe is exactly right. At least be honest. I wish people would be honest with themselves to say abortion's about sex.
Oh, it is.
That's all it's about.
Because people, listen to me. I mean, we're all in the world. People have sex before they get married, at least in this day and age. Years ago, maybe not. Mm-hmm. But I can remember when I was a kid watching a Happy Days show. I used to watch Happy Days.
I loved Happy Days. The Fonz.
Yes. And I remember they had an episode when Richie meets a divorced woman. And they made it as if this is not too long ago. This might have been 1977. I mean, oh my gosh, that's so commonplace. Right. My son talks about kids that he plays with. He says that they have two moms. My son is 6. This is just reality
Mm-hmm.
now. It's reality. Like, it's sad because, again, the society, I was just talking to my brother about this. And here's the sad part. A lot of people, I actually, to a degree, thought it during the Trump administration that he could fix certain things. This is not being solved. The solutions are not political because politics is downstream from culture. Joe says this all the time, and he's right. The culture is rotten. It's the culture. Like, you can't legislate morality. And this is where people are looking for these solutions. And we're seeing this now, like, particularly like on the left, they think that they could like create equality.
All right.
No, you're never going to legislate. You should have learned that through history. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. But that's what they're trying to do. And even on the right, like politically speaking, to be honest with you, the only way that that's going to happen, whether you want to hear it or not, is through Christ. That's it. That's as best it's going to get on this side of heaven. And it's never going to be heaven on this side of heaven, ever. We're in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying to create this in their hubris, in their secular humanists. They don't believe in God, and it's going nowhere.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, bottom line is, as far as all of this is concerned, all right, and I know some out there may disagree with Joe and I. The first thing to do before anything else is to break through the media stranglehold, the media establishment, the big tech stranglehold, so that we could get the message out there and at least force people to a table, because we got to sit down and talk about these things rather than not being able to talk about them. There's a lot of things Joe and I want to talk about, and we're going to be honest with you. Okay, we're going to be honest with you. We stay away from it. Okay, we stay away from it because either we don't want to get deplatformed, okay, and we figure we have enough to talk about. There's certain things we don't have to, but it shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't look for stories for Joe and I to talk about at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. I shouldn't have to look for stories and say, let me stay away from that. Oh, no, we shouldn't have to do that. The first thing to do is punch a hole in this monopoly that they have. All right, in the media establishment and big tech, and then get the message out there. And then if anybody wants to argue with us and say that our logic is assailable, Joe and I, we're regular guys. You want to sit across the table and have the argument? We will crush you on abortion. Crush you. Okay, we don't have PhDs. We didn't study with the critical legal studies department at Harvard or Yale Law School, and we'll crush you on abortion. You have no argument on abortion. So yeah, the pro-life argument is unassailable from the pro-death side. That's why we said earlier, Joe Resinello, that they know that. They even know that. Now it's just a matter of them saying, we know it's killing kids. We just want to keep it legal. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. More things to fight against. Joe Resinello, let's start our next story before we go to a break.
Carrie Donovan of Gateway Pundit, she talks about a grassroots victory. It's a critical race theory discussion, and it was banned in Cherokee County, Georgia. Groups of concerned parents, teachers, and students, and other concerned citizens around the country are organizing similar resistance to the teaching style and learning aids called critical race theory, with lobbying efforts at their school boards and local government levels, seeking similar resolutions to have it banned from public schools. And there have been other states that have also embraced this: Idaho, Iowa, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. They're also restricting how race and racism is being taught in schools. Lawmakers in several other states are attempting to do the same. That's in North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Utah, and others. So this is just another example of people are basically like, listen, there are racists in this country. Let's be honest.
It's racist all over the world.
People, it's sad, but it's true. But what's happening is, you hear stuff like they're taking away like a school that's named after Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
Thomas Jefferson existed. Whether you like it or not, yes, Thomas Jefferson had slaves. I think, normal person would say that was a wrong thing, obviously. But Thomas Jefferson was a founding father of this nation. Whether you like taking that out of it doesn't erase the fact that he actually was a founding father of the nation.
This is a conversation we have to continue after the break, but it's an important one because this is another one of those big battlefronts in the culture war. This whole idea that we're letting the left tell us what race relations and critical race theory, what it's all supposed to be like in America. And we're tired of it. And that's why we're fighting against it. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. Our chat room is crusadechannel.com/chat. And that's the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. And follow Joe and I across social media, Facebook, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. Support us any way you can. We love you for it. We love you anyway. And keep us in your prayers. Stick around. We're going to pick up critical race theory on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Remember, if you go to crusadechannel.com in an effort, a push, if you will, to double our subscriber base at Crusade Channel, if you click listen free at crusadechannel.com for 24/7, you get to listen free. And after having done so, for several weeks, it's a 90-day drive. We're convinced you're going to want to be subscribers of the Crusade channel. Mike Church and the whole lineup, which includes the front line with Joe and Joe. So we encourage all of you out there to do it. Joe, Ibram Kendi is a guy that needs to be, basically all his arguments need to be picked apart. He is too much in the cultural mainstream right now for my taste and a lot of people. And that goes for Hannah Nicole Jones. That goes for Joy Reid. Why they say, now I can hear the people out there already, Joe Rossinello. Oh, what are you doing? You're picking on black people. No, I'm picking on a bunch of leftists. That's what I'm doing. Well, Ibram Kendi is a leftist.
Well, a good example of that.
Go ahead.
You know, it's good that you bring that up because we basically grabbed this article out of the Federalist. You had this is a great example of what Joe's talking about. You have a white assistant dean at Brandeis University. It's a very, very good liberal arts university. I mean, good in the sense that it's very difficult to get in there. I mean, it's very, very competitive to get in there. She's calling herself a racist. The woman's name is Kate Slater, and this is what she said. She said this week that she despises whiteness and believes all white people are racist. And she put this on Instagram and she said, yes, all white people are racist in that all white people have been conditioned in a society where one's racial identity determines life experience, outcomes, and whiteness, whatever that is the norm and the default. That includes me. I don't hate white people. I hate whiteness. Now, I don't even understand what the hell she's talking about. I'm going to be honest with you.
Right.
Whiteness, and you are teaching at a university. Do you know how hard it is to get into Brandeis University? Let's forget about because a lot of these schools, when I say they're good schools, I wouldn't send any of my kids to one of those schools. First of all, they cost a fortune. Second of all, it's very, very competitive to get into one of those schools.
Right.
Like I would love, if they have 5,000 seats in a class, 80,000 people may apply. That's how competitive it is.
Right.
And all of them are gifted. So, and you're going to have your kid sit in front of a person that's saying, I hate the whiteness that's in me. What does that mean?
Listen, what's her name, Joe? What's her name? Kate Slater. If you hate yourself, do not project that on us. If because you're a dean at a prestigious university in America and a black person is not, and you feel guilt over that, do not project that on us. If you feel guilty because you have at least some self-perception that you have white privilege, do not project that on us, any one of us, because we don't want to hear it. We're not here. I got nothing to feel guilty about except my sins. And I am not guilty, nor is Joe. We are not guilty of the things that you accuse us of because of this, because of the color of our skin. Okay? I have enough problems dealing with my own sins and trying to get myself by God's grace, not by myself, but by God's grace, to heaven, okay? And I have to deal with my sins. I'm not taking on yours, Miss Slater, and I'm not going to allow you to let the government pass laws and regulations that are going to force that upon me and Joe and our families and our kids and our neighbors' kids. You got, it's my old argument. Can I digress for a second?
Sure.
Old argument. I used to hear Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist. Richard Dawkins, he said, there is no God. And maybe there's a 50-50 shot there's a God, right? He's the most ridiculous, bumbling human being you'll ever want to see. Richard Dawkins suggested one time, and there's a point to this story that relates to Kate Slater, okay? He said, beings should just make a decision to collectively commit suicide so that the planet can heal. Something along those lines. That basically his argument was human beings are a mistake of evolution. We're not made in the image and likeness of God. Joe, you know that because Richard Dawkins told us that. And here's the thing. He said, so being that we're a virus and we never were meant to exist, we're just an accident, don't know what his scientific proof of that is, okay, we should all kill ourselves. Here is my response. This is a Joe and Joe response from then and right now. You first. Professor Dawkins, you first. If you think you're a virus, I don't want you to. Go kill yourself. Don't try to convince other people that they're viruses. And in the same way to Dean Kate Slater, okay, she's an assistant dean, okay, then start with yourself. Resign and give your job to a black woman. Better yet, resign and give your job to a black transgender man or woman, whichever you prefer, okay? You do that. I, however, am going to keep my job. Not that it's a great one, but it's a good one. Okay. I'm going to keep it because I earned it. Joe's going to do the same thing. So are our wives, because we don't care what you have to say. Assistant Dean Slater. Well, and she's another one that's being fought against. You know, his whole idea.
But it's insane. It's insane. I don't even know what whiteness is.
Well, yeah.
Like, I'll be honest with you, for the life of me, I don't even, and the thing that's insane about it is where it's coming from. You would think that that would be coming from a street corner somewhere. This is coming from a very competitive American university where people are supposedly the smartest and the brightest of the bright. This is where, again, we're living in like this matrix world. It's madness.
Right.
And this is where it's getting to the point, like we were talking about, how people are basically just like, what is going on here? It doesn't matter what political identity you have. And it's going too far. I actually think, to be truthful with you, they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. If you're a Democrat out there, you should be concerned with what's happening. Honest to goodness, because it's getting crazy. It's not like regular, normal people who aren't, and listen, there are tribal people, they're going to vote, no matter what, for whoever on, whatever political side. It's very sad. I always say politics is a sickness. It's like people are schizophrenic. They'll be like, oh my gosh, gas prices are crazy. Oh my gosh, tax prices, the property taxes, this, that. Who'd you vote for?
Biden.
Joe Biden. Who are you going to vote for again? Joe Biden. You're almost like, dude, you're sick. You're a sick person.
Oh, I've said that to a million people. I said, don't complain to me about taxes. Don't complain to me about taxes when you vote for them. Don't complain to me that, in other words, nothing changes if you're a person who stays home and doesn't vote. Don't complain if you can't honestly say that you're the problem. Now, why? Because the Republicans are the bee's knees? No, of course not. Okay, we're the first ones to say that. All right, I'm this close, not even to not even voting anymore. But if I wasn't voting, there would be a reason for it. It won't be because I don't care. It'd be because they're all scumbags, and I don't want to vote for any one of them. But the bottom line is, you're right, Joe Reston. Although people complain all the time. So this woman, let's say, and let's continue with the critical race theory conversation on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Restinello, and man, are we in the breach, especially when you're talking about critical race theory. This is the biggest club they have right now, Joe Restinello, and they're trying to use it. And we got to stand up against it when they call you a racist and they call you to say, no, I'm anti-Marxist, because that's what this is. This woman, Slater, she talks like a Marxist, okay? It's got nothing to do with race. She talks like a Marxist, okay? But as I said, Joe, Is she going to give up her job to some, let's say, a black woman who grew up in Cleveland and worked her way up and went to Brandeis maybe, and then went to grad school at Yale and maybe goes back and she wants a job? Give her your job, Dean Slater. But but they don't live up to the things that they want to tell us to do, because if she feels so guilty, why does she do that? But this guy, Ibram Kendi, Joe, you have to explain this to me because I'm a little bit lost. How is it that people don't see this guy as being a race huckster? He's Al Sharpton with a PhD. That's all he is. And they treat him like he's saying something serious. Like critical race theory is something serious to be argued about. When and what are the words, Joe, that he uses to say that show that you're a racist? Okay, big government. That sounds Marxist to me. Socialism. That sounds like a Marxist to me. That doesn't sound like much to do with race. Okay, taxes. All right, progressive taxes. When you're critical of progressive taxes, you're a racist. You see what this guy is, and people like him, Hannah Nicole Jones, Joy Reid in the media at CNN. Okay, they're race hucksters is what they are. That woman in Georgia said it right. The woman Joy Reid called a racist. She said, critical race theory, I am not a racist if I don't want to talk to my kids. And what did Joy Reid say? Yes, you are. She said, yes, you are. These people need to be shouted down, like Glenn Lowry said.
Well, to be honest with you, it's their hour. And people like that, to be honest with you, are going to make a lot of money as a result of this. And here's another thing. A lot of these corporations are embracing this. They're going to drop it as soon as it's out of vogue. People don't realize corporations don't care about anything but money. I actually laugh when I hear this stuff, as if they actually give a crap, these people. Like, really care is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They live in isolated bubbles. They send their kids to $50,000 a year grammar schools. They pay $80,000 a year in property tax. They live in bubbles. They're not living in reality in terms of what normal people, rubbing shoulders with people, waiting online in the ShopRite, dealing with things that you and I deal with. And I laugh that they dictate these ideas that don't affect them in the least bit.
I have to ask you this, Joe, because you're in more of a corporate structure than I am. What do you think the CEO and the board of directors are doing when they say, listen, they remember something, I can't use the word here. Crap runs downhill, right? Is that what we're always told? Okay. So if you're a little bit more downhill, guess what? The crap's going to hit you. The CEO and the board of directors, they sit there like this, all right? And they say, what's this critical race theory? And they say, well, it's a thing, it's in vogue. And if we're not on board with it, they're going to try to boycott us and say, all right, get the managers on the phone. Tell them to start showing the videos to all the employees. All right. But what about you, Mr. CEO and Mr. Board of Directors? No, we don't talk to our employees anyway. Why are we going to talk to them about this? My point is, Joe, they don't get their hands dirty. The boards of directors, they're the ones, like you said, they're about money. So when they look at the profit, when they're on board with critical race theory, they say, good. When it starts to come down because of critical race theory, they'll abandon it. But remember, they don't have to deal with it. They tell you to deal with it. They tell your boss to deal with it. Say, yeah, they're the city of New York. They're imposing, we have to do some retraining for all our employees. Well, what about you, CEO? I don't have to watch that. I'm not watching that nonsense. So it all runs downhill.
But also what I would say is this. I'll say this, that I could give two examples of systemic racism. If we want to talk about systemic racism, why don't we talk about it in the abortion arena? Why don't we talk about it in the public schools? You see, this is where, again, if you had a discussion, you can't have that frank discussion in the workplace. But if you really did, everyone shuts up. No one would say a word. You'd say, okay, you want to talk about systemic racism? Why does a single black mom have to send her kids to a crappy public school in Cleveland, Ohio?
Right.
Why can't she send them to a charter school or get a voucher to send them to a school that's a private school that gives a better education and has higher percentage of the kids going to college? No conversation. Why is it that black women have more abortions than white women? Why is it that Planned Parenthood clinics are in minority neighborhoods, walking distance, 85% of them? Is that systemic racism? Shouldn't we have that conversation? You see, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's selective. There's so many holes in the argument. What they do have is the press. You see, the press is the propaganda machine, and that's what we're going to talk about that too on this show if we get to it, God willing, with Mr. Dershowitz, who's bringing something against CNN. It's a very
big
important
story.
Conversation.
Yep.
But people, you see, the press sells this narrative to America, and everyone eats it up. And this is, I'll be honest with you, the press, I even said, like I said, I lump Fox in too. Don't think I don't. I don't listen to Fox News. Trust me. The press is a problem. It's not the press. It's the Inquirer. It's the Inquirer.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking, listen, it's a business. CNN, what's her face, said this, and she was spot on. Who was Trump's, that woman? She was from Jersey.
Kellyanne Conway.
She said this one time in an interview, and she was spot on. She said, listen, you guys made a business decision. And that's exactly what they did. Guess what? Fox made a business decision too.
Mm-hmm.
They did. It's about ratings. It's like movies. You ever watch a movie? Like, even when I did go to the movies, like in my 20s, and you'd see movies and you'd say to yourself, I just went to that movie. That movie stunk.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up and down stunk. You know something? The producer, the writers, the director, they know it stunk too.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think they don't. Why did they put it out? Money. It's a demographic. You have some business guy at a table in a conference room that says, listen, 18-year-old girls want to see Tom Cruise scaffold, jump down from that movie stinks.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get this segment of the population. We're going to make this much money. It cost us that much money to make, and this is our profit margin. I could care less that the story stinks. We don't care about Tom Cruise, but he's going to bring in this money, so let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with the news. The news does that too. It's not news. It's there to affirm people, and that's it. And that's on the right and the left. The truth has nothing to do with it.
It used to. When we were growing up, the most trusted man in America was Walter Cronkite. And you want to know what? People trusted Walter Cronkite. They trusted him as to report the news. Back in the 70s, I mean, that's the way it was. You did, and then, but little by little, because that's one of the institutions that the left they need the press. That's central to all their nefarious plans. Little by little, they corrupted the entire press. From the time of the, let's say, late 70s, 80s, 90s, okay, the only place you could get a conservative point of view, and we talked about this because Joe and I are now on AM radio in Connecticut, Veritas Catholic Network. We have a Sunday afternoon, 5 o'clock interview show. The only place you could get conservative point of view was AM talk radio. That's when Rush Limbaugh exploded, okay? And then after that, you had Fox News. But little by little, they corrupted the entire media. The media is not trusted. CNN is just and MSNBC, they're just a residual, effect of all these decades of liberal dominance in the media, and we're still dealing with it. The difference, though, now is that people are waking up to it, woke in a real way, not woke like they are. Okay.
But I used to talk about it like years ago, like when the New York Times pulled something, like say with the Catholic Church covered something, and I used to be like, look at this, the New York Times. I don't even comment on it anymore because it's so commonplace. It's horrendous. You talk about, I'll use an example. New York Times, it came out, I'll tell you the exact date. It was May 21st. It was like two weeks ago. They called Mother Teresa's order a cult. I mean, how insulting.
They did a hit job on Mother Teresa by a nun who's no longer with the order, who's making all these crazy claims, just like Christopher Hitchens did when he wrote his book, Missionary Position. Bill Donahue, in a debate with him when Hitchens was alive, said, you don't have one citation in your book. Not one. Everything is stream of consciousness from you. These are all things you just surmised or put together without any reference to anything, any citation whatsoever. Now, I haven't read this ex-nun's book, but to Joe's larger point, why is the New York Times putting out a hit piece on Mother Teresa? Why?
But I just use that as an example, and they get away with it.
Like, well,
and here's the thing. Why do they do it? Because the people that read the Times want to hear that. That's it.
It's a shame.
It's about money. It's about money. The news is a joke, to be honest with you. It's a friggin' joke. And like I said, Fox included. Please don't misunderstand me. I haven't looked at Fox in months. Actually, since November, 0. I
Right.
haven't even for a second looked at it. It is a joke. Any kid, if you ask me, that wants to be a journalist, there is no such thing as a journalist. You work for a machine. That's it.
Right.
You work for a machine. And frankly, this is the sad part. The American public eats it up on both sides of the aisle. They're not interested in the truth if it challenges their own narrative. God knows that goes for conservatives too.
Absolutely.
Don't think it doesn't.
Let's leave it there for a second. We're going to take a quick break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. The chat room is crusadechannel.com/chat is the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. Stick around. We're not leaving this conversation just yet. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. Joe, I like this article by Carrie Donovan in Gateway, all right? But she made a good point, okay? A very good point, I thought. And I think this speaks to what you're saying, because people are starting to wake up and rebel against what you're talking about the media, okay? And everything that we're being spoon-fed by academia, the media, big tech, all of it, okay? She's saying citizens who had remained on the sidelines for most of their lives are, and this is part of the reason why we chose these topics for tonight, they're starting to engage in legislative action on many topics, seeing a groundswell of like-minded support. Staying vigilant in the populist MAGA movement is life-giving to others. Conservative populist activists are achieving great successes when they apply themselves. Joe and I make that point all the time. Got to do something. Can't just sit on the sidelines. Got to do something. And Carrie ends this with the old saying that all politics is local is coming back into fashion. She's watching the front line with Joe and Joe. That's a constant theme of this show. Start small, start locally. Joe went to a meeting in the town to explain to them why the Choose Life flag should go up. Am I right?
That's true.
Joe believes, and I believe him, that they heard what he said and that flag is going to go up. If he didn't go there with his deacon friend, guess what? The flag wouldn't be going up, would it? That you could say with 100% certainty.
And like I said, you have the truth. You know, all you have to do, you don't have to be a scholar. And I'm not a scholar, but you just have to be willing to speak the truth. And it's getting to the point, listen, this is getting crazy. You know, like I said, do you want your kids in schools? They're very smart what they do. And here's the problem, guys, and this is the reality. Not everyone, sadly, can homeschool. Not everyone can send their kids to private school. It's the reality of life. You know, like I've used this example. There are many Catholics. There are very rich Catholics. But you know something? You go to some parishes, people are very poor. You're going to tell me that some guy who comes from Guatemala legally and his wife that barely speaks English, they're going to homeschool their kids?
Right.
I'm being honest. Like, let's have this frank conversation.
Right.
So they have no recourse but to send their kids. Like my grandparents, when they came here, my grandmother had a 4th grade education. My grandfather worked in a factory. My grandmother's not homeschooling her 3 children in Newark, New Jersey. That's not happening. And there are lots of people like that.
That's because you got to go to work. I got to know time. I got to do.
But my point
I
is,
know what you're saying.
We have to address this.
Yes.
And this is where Bill Donahue says that Jews in Brooklyn will go and they still send their kids to the yeshiva. And I got news for you. I send my kids to private school. I don't have, like, not saying it's the greatest thing that they're memorizing, Thomas Aquinas, but it's still a lot more wholesome than the public school.
Yep.
But I can afford it. Not everyone can. And not everyone can homeschool either. You know, Catholicism is a religion of the poor. Let me first express that. In the world, forget about America. Go, and I have seen Catholicism of the poor in Haiti, in South America,
In India,
in Vietnam. Like, do you think that like regular working people can do? No, they can't. But what about them? Why do they have to subject their kids to this crap? Why?
Right.
And they know what they're doing when they're making these kids sit in front of it. They're stealing your children away from you. I can remember doing a job. This is a while ago. I did a credit risk audit at Bank of New York. This is a number of years ago. I was consulting. And I was talking to this guy, really nice guy. He was from Long Island. And he was telling me, like, we really saw eye to eye politically. We were just having a conversation as like I'm working. And he's like, my daughter in high school is basically telling me X, Y, and Z. And I'm like just sitting there like, are you out of your mind? Where did you get these ideas? And where she got them? In public school.
Right.
In public school. And again, some people, listen, I know it's not a popular conversation, but it's a real one, have no choice but to send their kids there because of the circumstances of their life. What about them? What about them? You see, years ago, when America was healthy, Catholic school was very cheap. I went to a Catholic school. It was a lot of blue-collar people. My father was a barber. Tuition now, it's like in other countries because there's no vocations. You didn't have to pay Sister Anne a salary.
But Joe, you got to remember something too. My father, God rest his soul, and Joe's father, God rest his soul, were a year apart and did not know each other. Joe and I didn't grow up together, right? We're a year apart at Barringer High School.
Public school.
Public school in New Jersey. 1953, my old man graduated. Yours graduated in 54. Okay. There was prayer in the schools.
Crucifix on the wall.
This is public school, okay? That the Supreme Court, when they ventured into the culture war, said no more of that. That's why the Supreme Court really needs to get some power taken away from it once we get Roe versus Wade and some other things straightened out, okay? They took the prayer out of the public schools. They took God out of the public schools. I will say it till the day I die to anybody who'll listen. My father's generation, all right, and Joe's father's generation, when they graduated Barringer High School, they were more equipped for life than your current 4-year college graduate. Infinitely more equipped. Infinitely more equipped. They knew how to read, write, and do math, and it wasn't considered racist to know how to read, write, and do math. They went to school with black guys.
My father played basketball
and black women.
His father played football.
Right. Okay.
In a city school.
They played football against East Orange High School, where John Amos, played football from Good Times. A great actor, John Amos, African American from East Orange. Okay. There might have been prejudice and groups, but there wasn't some systemic racism. This was public school in the 1950s, and they wrecked it. And to Joe's point, those Dominicans that are coming over here, or somebody from Honduras, in other words, they should be able to trust the public schools, but they can't. They can't because the public schools are not like that anymore.
Many of those people are good Catholic people. I can remember a guy who came to look at my fence in my backyard. He worked for a contractor. The contractor was clueless, and he was basically making this guy. He was from Guatemala, actually. And I kind of got him on the side, and I was talking to him, and I said, listen, give me your number. If I need something, I'll call you. You do it. I'd rather give the money to you. This guy's clueless. I was like, how many kids you have? I asked him. He's like, 5. You think his wife is going to homeschool his kids? He barely speaks English.
Right.
The man's filthy dirty, works like a dog.
Well, you think the public school establishment cares about that guy, his wife, and his kids? They don't give a crap about that family.
And that guy, not for nothing, could be the greatest Catholic. I don't know. But I got news for you. Catholicism is the religion of the poor. Don't misunderstand some of the stuff that's out there. You know, globally speaking, you look at the 9 billion people that live on this earth, at least half of them probably live on $5 a day. That's no lie.
That's no joke.
And the Catholics globally, you go into the Philippines, you go into South America.
And they're faithful people.
Absolutely. What about them with an education?
Well, they don't count, Joe. The liberals don't care about them. My brother and I used to talk about this. This goes back decades, back to the 90s, when my brother and I used to do kitchen table politics, but then back then it was only kitchen table, discussions because we didn't have the internet. We used to talk about it all the time when they use words like the poor or the people. These are abstractions to the left. When you say the poor and you say to them, do you know poor people? Do you? Do you know immigrants? Unless they're cleaning your pool or they're cleaning up your house in Livingston, New Jersey. Okay. Do you know immigrants? Do you know their families and their children? Joe and I do. Why? Because we're the greatest guys in the world? No. But through our service through the church, we know plenty of poor people. Okay. Do they? Everything is, my brother and I used to say, everything is an abstraction to them. It's just, they say it. It sounds good. The poor, the oppressed, minorities. These people never saw a minority in their life. And if they did, it's the guy that works at the car wash.
Or it's the black couple that both went to Yale.
Right.
To be honest with
you. And in
you.
which case, that couple refutes all their liberal arguments because they're a black couple that went to Yale. My point is that everything is always, again, it goes back to that idiot assistant dean at Brandeis. Don't project your guilt on the rest of us. It's like Jack Nicholson said in the movie As Good as It Gets. Okay. The woman comes knocking on the door and he opens the door and he looks at her and he says, sell crazy somewhere else. We're all stocked up here. That's the way I feel about like the left when it comes to guilt. Sell your guilt somewhere else. We're all stocked up here. Joe and I acknowledge that we're not perfect men, and we take our guilt and we bring it where it's supposed to be. In the confessional, give it to Christ because he promises to forgive us of our sins, and then we move on. But I don't need their guilt. And convincing the rest of the country that somehow I'm supposed to be guilty, Joe's supposed to be guilty, you're supposed to be guilty, everybody on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, we're all supposed to be guilty. Because the left tells us to, and the black race hucksters like Ibram Kendi and people like that, who's Al Sharpton with a PhD, are all convincing us that we're all racist. We're not listening to them anymore. More importantly, we want to debate with them, which they won't be able to handle, Joe Rossinello, because they'll get trounced. Particularly, you brought up education. Particularly on education. They have no ground to stand on whatsoever. None. And that's the truth.
It's a good conversation.
It's an angering one. That you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, and man, are we in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Get in the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. Remember, we're doing a 90-day push. Go on crusadechannel.com. Hit listen free, and you're going to listen to all Crusade programming for about the next, 60 to 90 days. And we're convinced that you're going to want to become a subscriber at the end of that time. Mike Church is there. Obviously, he runs the station. Rick Barrett, Joe and Joe. So, yeah, we encourage you to do that. Absolutely. In the meantime, Joe Rossinello, where are we headed?
Let's talk Carville. And he said something on Cuomo's show on CNN. I think it's very interesting. We alluded to it on an earlier segment. This is what he had to say. He said, so often Democrats come across with this metropolitan arrogance, urban smugness that people feel, and it hurts us. By the way, it even hurts us with people that live in cities that don't speak this jargon faculty language. That's the phrase that he's using. He said, the people in the South Side of Chicago do not speak the same language as the faculty at the University of Chicago speaks. It's just that simple. We're Democrats, and we're trying to persuade people, and we have to persuade a lot of them because you're right. 18% of the country elects 52 senators. We have to be communicators and communicate with everybody, and don't be so smug about everything. He is right. And that is exactly what happened in England in the Labour Party. He is saying it. I actually am amazed that he said this on CNN because they are, like I said, regular guys, and I know many of them that are Democrat. They call them Hudson County Democrats, right across the county line from me. From Jersey, I live in Bergen County, very close, southern Bergen County. I live right on the edge of Hudson County. They vote for Democrats. They call them Hudson County Democrats. Union people, worked on the PATH train, worked for Port Authority, could go on and on and on and on and on. Here's the deal. They're not on board with this insanity. And Carville is calling them out. You see, that person may vote for the Democratic Party, but is repulsed by MSNBC.
Mhm.
And as it goes on, they're not going to show up on election day. And if that happens, you lose. You lose. They have to, I'll be honest with you, it's gone too far, Joe.
Once, and this is one of those things where Joe and I, our blessed Lord said, be as shrewd as serpents, did he not? But be as innocent as doves. Now, Joe and I are not innocent, okay? But we're trying to be a little bit shrewd. So all you guys out there in the Crusade channel and everywhere else listening to us, you understand where I'm going with this. Once certain things in certain states get straightened out, come the elections of 2022, and we think where we're going with that, okay, then I think their ass is grass. Pardon my language, I really do. Because of what you said and because of what Carville said, that liberal smugness, that elitism, that faculty lounge jargon, people are going, these are not my people. Donald Trump might be abrasive, but they say to themselves, but at least he spoke to me. When you get the Slaters of the world, the Assistant Dean of Brandeis, the Ibram Kendis, the race hucksters, all these people, the liberals on CNN and MSNBC, when they open their mouth, the average Democrat, you call them Hudson County Democrats, they probably sit there like this and they go, I vote for that person?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I vote for that person?
And there's a lot of people like that across the nation.
A ton.
And, they say the greatest poll is looking out your window. I remember when Trump won originally, and I read an article because not many people called it. And one guy who did call the victory was a guy who said when he was in Vegas, he asked cab drivers, who are people saying is going to win?
When was this?
When Trump originally won.
Oh, okay.
And he basically said the cab driver was like, everyone who comes in my cab in Vegas is saying I'm voting for Donald Trump. You see, I'll use another example like that. When Trump originally won, I live in a Democratic part of New Jersey. They vote. It's just the way it is. I did not see one Hillary Clinton. I remember this distinctly. One Hillary Clinton sign on someone's lawn. Not one.
Not one.
That's, you see, polls are right in front of your face.
Joe, I said a million times during this past election, we move around a lot, Joe and I. We see a lot of people in different areas, okay? We go to stores. I've been working in the city. I started back to work after 3 months of being laid off last year. We were back to work. It was on the patio. It was 90 degrees, but I was at least back to work. Joe, I was waiting on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in the 3 months or 4 months prior to the election. I didn't meet anybody that was voting for Joe Biden, and this is New York City. All over New Jersey. I didn't meet anybody in New Jersey voting for Joe Biden. And I'm not even exaggerating. So Joe's right. It was right in front of your face. That's why for a lot of reasons we were very frustrated on election night. Okay. But the bottom line is this. The reason why that a lot of people and a lot of my coworkers who voted for Obama twice, okay, said, I'm voting for Donald Trump. These are not conservatives like Joe and I. But they said, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. Okay, Donald Trump did some good things, and I'm feeling the consequences of the good things he did. I'm voting for Donald Trump. No, it's why. And one of the main reasons was because they felt like Trump talked to them, and many of them were women. So forget about that misogyny argument. A lot of the women that I work with, minority women too, okay, Hispanic in particular, would say, I'm voting for Trump. One girl told me flat, she goes, Jojo, I'm voting for Trump. Because they know I'm a Republican. That goes without saying. They know I'm conservative. Like, Jojo, I'm voting for Trump. Person voted for Obama twice. Why? Because what Joe's saying, Carville pointed out, this liberal smugness, this talking down to people. You have to vote for Joe Biden. If you're even thinking about voting for Trump, you ain't black. That's not smug and elitist. That Biden sits there and tells black people they ain't black if they're even thinking about voting for Trump.
Well, I would even say it on social media, like people I went to high school with. I would crack up. I mean, sometimes I'd get involved in the conversation, but more times than not, I'd look at it and just laugh. They'd be like, oh, this person's so stupid. Oh, my gosh, You're so stupid. How could you possibly? No. There are many people that vote for Republicans that have a lot of good reasons.
Mhm.
It's like oh, you're such a stupid person. That person, oh, uneducated voters, oh, blah, 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 blah. I got news for you. That type of conversation re-elects Donald Trump. I got news for you.
Right.
It re-elects him. But again, that's a conversation for another day. I think that Carville gets it. In this point, he's actually calling the Democrats out. They should listen to him.
Joe, let's give some props where they belong. Joe and I think Bill Clinton is one of the most probably evil presidents we've ever had. Okay. But I will tell you this, and Carville was his advisor. Let's be honest about it.
Absolutely.
Bill Clinton connected with the American people.
Oh, he was the best I'll be honest with you.
Best politician in our lifetime.
The slickest dude on
All right.
earth.
He earned his name, Slick Willie. I'll feel your pain. When he said, I'll feel your pain, that melted people. They believed him. Okay. They believe now, and he was not, let's remember, he was not a bad president after his first 2 years because he was forced to be non-ideological and work with the Republicans who swept in 1994. Okay. I'm not taking credit away from Bill Clinton, but he had sense enough to work in the middle. Okay. But he connected with people.
Oh, he's a master.
And he crushed, I'm sorry, Bill Clinton crushes Barack Obama. Obama was a better speaker, but Clinton connected with people.
Clinton was a politician.
He was
a politician.
But Joe, as far as that goes, and Carville was his advisor, Carville knew this guy connects with people. They listen. They might not even be Democrats. They might be middle of the road Republicans, and they love this guy because they believed he was being sincere. And Carville was the one advising him to do that.
Well, I always used to say Obama was a charismatic ideologue. He was who can give a good speech. He was charismatic. Clinton was a politician. Clinton, when Obama ran for his second term, if you ask me at the Democratic convention, he saved him.
Who?
Clinton came out and spoke for Obama. Obama was hurting against
Romney
because
believe it to Romney to blow it
because the economy was horrible.
Right.
It was horrible. I was convinced. I was wrong. I'll go on record right now. I was convinced Romney was going to win solely because of the economy. It was the second worst economic situation since the Great Depression. It's called the Great Recession. The mortgage crisis crushed people, crushed them.
Right.
And I was like, this guy, there's no way he's going to win because of it. He did. But Clinton, you see the difference between the two. Clinton didn't leave a bad taste in your mouth. Obama did. Obama shoved it like when he was with McCain. There are consequences to winning elections. See, Clinton didn't do that. He knew how. See, Obama, I'm going to be honest with you. Obama kind of he got knocked down when Trump won.
Mm-hmm.
If Biden loses, like meaning the next into 24, say DeSantis beats him, that's knocked down too. He has one more life left, and then he goes into the ether.
Okay,
like
I wish he'd go into the ether now
because Trump took out the Bushes and he took out the Clintons. Obama's still relevant. He's still like.
Could you imagine if Trump is the guy that takes out Obama?
Could happen.
I mean,
could happen
politically. Again, we're talking about politically.
Well, he took out the Bushes.
See, the Clintons take people out literally. They take people out. Okay. But Trump is a guy who could take you out figuratively or politically. Just take, like you said, does anybody really care about George Bush right now?
Oh,
do you?
The Bushes are
Jeb Bush?
They're
you think Jeb Bush is
a wealthy white family in America?
Do you think Jeb Bush is going to run in 2024? Not a chance. The Bushes are done. Clintons are done.
They're done.
Hillary's done. Okay. In other words, so we don't have to put up with it. Chelsea Clinton couldn't run for dog catcher. Trump took them out. Trump is going to take out Obama.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Obama, though, I'll tell you what, he took a beating when Trump won. And we'll see what happens in 2024.
Yeah.
We'll see. Because
let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break. No, it's a great conversation, but we're at the Crusade Channel, way in the breach, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. The chat room, if you want to go in there, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in is at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please, please, please where you see Joe and I on social media. Like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell for notifications. Do anything you can to help us out, because we are firmly convinced that on social media we're being shadow banned. Now, having said that, if we're right, you can help counteract that by sharing our videos all over the place. And you could find us literally all over the place. And if you want to drop in a couple bucks, patreon.com, Frontline with Joe and Joe. Stick around. We have another couple segments in the conversation. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And man, we're having a great conversation today at the Frontline on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. Our chat room is crusadechannel.com/chat. The only social media out there worth actually socializing in. But yeah, Joe Resinello, I mean, it's one thing about Trump is love him or hate him. He was able, not as good as Clinton as far as speaking ability, but Trump had the ability to connect with people, and he backed it up with policies. That's the key. He backed it up, Joe, with his policies. When it came to China, workers' rights, trade agreements, Keystone Pipeline, fracking, blue-collar people out there in Ohio, our friend Barbara Farley out in Wisconsin, okay? And all the good people out there in the Midwest. Trump connected with those people. Obama and his buddies better watch their butts. They better watch their butts in 2022. And if Obama thinks he's smarter than Trump, he better get it straight. The billionaire real estate developer from New York is going to hand you your Harvard-educated butt. He's going to hand you your butt, okay? So don't underestimate Trump, Mr. Obama. Don't, because he'll make you irrelevant just like he did the Bushes and the Clintons.
Let's talk Dershowitz. I think this is a very important conversation, and I actually think that this could have lasting effects on the media if it goes in his favor. Basically, Dershowitz, and this was covered by Newsmax, he's suing CNN. Here's some background. A judge dismissed CNN's motion to toss Dershowitz's $300 million lawsuit, ruling that the coverage of Dershowitz's first impeachment trial speech was not based upon a fair and accurate summary of his statements to the Senate. He said, this is Dershowitz, this is what he said. He said, "We're thrilled we have got an opportunity to go forward to discovery. This wasn't something that happened spontaneously," he said. "This came from the top down, and we're going to prove it, and they're going to regret having distorted the truth." Now, first of all, Alan Dershowitz, just to give you some background, is a liberal. But I have a respect for him because he does have, to a degree, at least from what I can't even say to a degree, he respects the Constitution. Like you may not agree. I don't agree with this interpretation of the Constitution. Obviously, on porn, on abortion, okay, and certain things he said. But put it like this. He takes a liberal view of the Constitution, but he's not a guy that wants to discard the Constitution. I think that's like the Marxists want to discard the Constitution. That's a fair way to put it. That's a fair way to put it.
And again, and Dershowitz too. Let's remember, especially from a conservative Christian or conservative Catholic point of view, Dershowitz is not our friend. Okay, he's not. Okay, but he's not insane either.
That's a good point. He isn't insane, and I'm going to tell you this: why it's okay. $300 million. It's a lot of money. It's a dent in their, what's it called, their P&L if they were to, take
so that's a big dent.
It is a big dent. But what I think is more important is this, and this is what's at stake, and this is what he said. It will create general law, basically, if this goes in his favor. And the general law will be that you can't totally distort a recording to deliberately make the person say the opposite of what he said, and then have commentators come on and attack him for saying something he didn't say. Mm-hmm. You see, that's the important thing.
Right.
That's the precedent, because that will go beyond CNN.
Well, that will protect DeSantis. And because I think DeSantis is going to file a lawsuit against CBS.
Good.
That would have an effect because they selectively edited DeSantis and his interview to create on 60 Minutes a hit piece against DeSantis. And it's the same thing with Dershowitz. They used to invite Dershowitz to their cocktail parties when he was never saying anything nice really about Republicans, okay? And he's all pro-abortion and pro-pornography. So he was welcome at the cocktail parties, okay? But as soon as he said to the Senate and to the liberals, hold it, you can't do this. You need a reason to it. Or if you think you can move forward with impeachment, knock yourself out, but you're not going to succeed. And guess what? I'm going to prove you can't succeed because I'm going to defend Trump. And then CNN deliberately, now again, Dershowitz said, I can't wait to get them in discovery. Why? Because he's going to get them. He's going to make it, or he's going to show the court that what they did was deliberate. And the judge so far agrees, at least to the point where he said, we're not dismissing this case. Couple things going on. Number one, Joe's right. $300 million is a dent, okay? But if that happens 10 times,
you're out of
20
business.
times, that's a problem. So the precedent will be set with money, okay?
And that's the way to do it.
If they do it, Joe's always said the money moves the dial. If they go down that road again, the number now is $300 million. With Nick Sandman, it was significantly less than that, okay? When him and his family sued CNN and I believe the Washington Post, okay? We don't know what that number is. Let's assume it was significantly less than $300 million. That's the old number. The new number, if Dershowitz wins this, is $300 million every time they decide to do something like this, which, like you said, that's going to be a deterrent in and of itself. But the general law will have changed. And Dershowitz will have proven in court that they deliberately edited this to disparage Dershowitz. And he has every right to sue them, okay, under whatever defamation of character, libel, whatever he wants, okay, to sue them. And he'll set a precedent that's going to have a very good effect for us conservatives because the liberals won't be able to get away what they've been getting away with.
Again, it's a propaganda machine. Conservatives, listen, I don't even want to call them conservatives. Fox, they do the same thing. I'm not interested. I want the news. That's it. I just want the news. And a lot of people feel that way.
Joe, I got to disagree with you. I'm not a fan of Fox anymore, and I haven't watched Fox. You know, and I say that a respectful disagreement. Fox doesn't do what they do. Fox does not selectively edit videos the way CNN does and the way MSNBC does. They don't. They just don't.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that I'm in the tank for Fox, okay? And I know what you're saying because there are some out there, okay, that I've never seen Fox do that. And I'll give you another example. You want a better example? James O'Keefe from Project Veritas. Now, he goes in there, he makes videos, right? Undercover videos. He doesn't edit them. He just puts them out. You know, he puts a caption on them. Oh, what do they call that? The reader on the bottom, so you can hear what, you can read what they're saying. But he doesn't edit those videos. He'll be immune from this law. You want to know why? He'll say, here's the video. I didn't edit it. All I did was make a video undercover and I posted it on social media and I posted it on our website. James O'Keefe will be protected under this law, whereas CNN won't, because again, they do selectively edit. And I just say that because I've never seen, I know Fox can be in the tank conservative, okay, at times, all right, but I've never seen them do anything egregious like that. I gotta be fair.
I just want the news, actually.
Well, yeah.
You know, like in all honesty, and that means if say a quote unquote conservative does something wrong, I want to know about it, actually. Let's have the conversation. Let's have it fair. No one believes anything anymore. That's the sad thing. No one believes it. It's so tainted. Everything. I want to know the truth. That's it. Listen, if someone did something wrong, well, let's have a conversation about it, no matter who it is. And I think that this will help the situation outside of the money. I think, listen, I'm glad CNN has to pay money. I'm glad that they had to pay money to Salmon. I'm sure it was a lot of money too. If it wasn't $250 million, I bet you it was a lot. Don't think it wasn't.
Probably you talking about Salmon?
Yeah.
Probably enough where the kid's not going to have to work, or not have to worry about it.
Forget it. I mean, it was probably a lot of money.
Let's say it was $20 million. Which was about maybe 10% of what they wanted.
Exactly.
That sets up Nick Salmon for the rest of his life.
That's a ton of money.
And he deserves it because that dude will never be able to get a job because of what the media did to him.
But this makes it holds them accountable. The press is out of control. In America, listen, it's out of control. And and frankly, if you ask me, it's people don't look deep enough into things, like sadly, and a narrative is spun and everyone buys it. And frankly, it's dangerous, if you ask me. It's dangerous.
Mhm.
And the politicians know it. They know it. Like, listen, it's the propaganda machine, the elites of America, that includes the banks, that includes big tech,
Mhm.
are all in the bag for the press.
That's why we got to start hitting them in their pocket. Hit them in the pocket. Listen to what Dershowitz said. This is very important. He says, I'm really looking forward to an opportunity to depose CNN. Dershowitz told, I think he told that to Sean Spicer on Newsmax. And he said, this will be the first time this has ever happened. And I think CNN is probably quaking in their boots. And just to put a finer point on it, not, as Joe says, not only because of the money, but because their whole reason for existence, okay, is going to be crushed because they're not going to be able to do what it is they've been accustomed to doing. And that's going to send a ripple effect out to the wider media. So CBS won't be able to do what they did to Ron DeSantis and do what they've done to conservatives and people who disagree with them for decades. For decades, they've been doing this. Now, hopefully, I'm praying Dershowitz wins this case. I'm going to offer up many rosaries for this because the left, or let's put it, the media needs to be put back on their heels. Joe and I say at the front line with Joe and Joe all the time on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. The top 3 things that need to change in this country, the central one is the media.
Oh, my gosh.
The media.
Out of control.
And this is a big story. This is not a small story. This has financial repercussions. This has repercussions as far as the standards in the media and what they can and cannot do. This is an awesome case. And although I don't like Alan Dershowitz, I think he's going to make the argument.
I think he will too. I actually think, to be truthful with you, he has a case. And I actually think DeSantis has a very strong case.
Very strong case.
60 Minutes.
In fact, DeSantis, after Dershowitz wins his case, DeSantis should hire Alan Dershowitz to go after and sue CBS. Dershowitz once famously said, I would defend Hitler and I'd win. That's what he said. Okay. Well, I don't want you to defend Hitler, Mr. Dershowitz, but I wish you Godspeed in prosecuting this lawsuit. All right. And deposing CNN and really getting to the bottom of what they did to you. This way you could do much good for this country by putting the media back on their heels.
Well, this is a good story. I like this one as well, Joe. We're talking about the John Lewis Voting Right Advancement Act. Ken Blackwell brings us this one. Basically, this is a power grab. It's basically they're forcing states to get permission from the Democratic-controlled federal government before implementing election integrity measures like voter ID and other constitutional safeguards. Let me first break that down. The voter ID thing is somehow being linked to the African-American community. Let me break this down. It has nothing to do with the African-American community. It has everything to do with Joe Biden plans to have 39 million illegals, that's what a number that I read, come into this country and they'll be permitted to vote. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with African Americans. And what they're trying to do is turn Texas and Arizona blue. That's the goal. If you don't see that, it has nothing to do with African Americans, because African Americans can get a picture ID, whether it's a license or some
state issued ID.
Yes.
Easily.
With very little effort.
For free.
You can get that. So it has nothing to do with that. But this is basically, I guess, like let's give a little background. Yeah. Basically, what's at issue here is the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It said basically that certain parts of the country must get permission from the U.S. Department of Justice or the Federal District Court of D.C. before changing any of their election laws or redrawing legislative district lines after a decade's national consensus.
Now, that had to do with race.
Absolutely.
That was certain states that were discriminating against African Americans prior to the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That was legit, and the Supreme Court upheld it. In certain instances, they needed pre-clearance to either redraw a district or to change their election laws. Okay, that was fairly sensible because those states did exhibit anti-Black discrimination when it came to voting. But I love the way Ken Blackwell points it out. He says, But they're trying to use that now. They're using that same issue now. He says, but then you were talking about fire hoses, attack dogs, beatings, and other things that were being perpetrated on African Americans. Now you're talking about voter ID, like Joe said. You're just talking about voter ID. You don't need pre-clearance from. If you're Alabama, if you're one of those states that needed to be pre-cleared years ago, or Mississippi, okay, you don't need pre-clearance now to say you're going to demand voter ID. What are you talking about?
I don't.
Right?
It's completely.
But they're trying to couch it in the civil in the Voting Rights Act. And who do they name it after? Mr. Civil Rights Movement himself, John Lewis. Okay, who never lifted a finger to protect African-American babies from being slaughtered in abortions. Yet the left tells me I have to respect John Lewis when he was a baby-killing Democrat. I don't care what he did during the Civil Rights Movement. I really don't. He was a baby-killing Democrat, but they put his name on this legislation because that's supposed to make him be. If, again, one more time, we talked about this with the Equality Act. And we talked about this with other legislation. The name means something because they need to be able, through their media allies, to say, you're against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Therefore, you're racist.
Exactly. And it has nothing, again, the reason why they don't want people. Listen, let's go back to common sense. I'm going to use Tim Scott's line. Common sense makes for common ground.
Mm-hmm.
It does. You have to, if you buy tickets for, say, I'm going to pick it up, a baseball game. The Yankees. I'm just picking up the team and getting tickets. You say, hi, I'm Joe Ressinello. I'm here to pick up my tickets. Can I see your license? Sure. Here's my license. Okay. Could you sign here? Here you go. How much are they? Here's the money. Thank you for the tickets. Have a good day, miss. That's everything. Like
you just described everyday life.
Everything. That's normal. Like you need to do something. You have to show ID.
Right.
It's part of life.
Try to make a withdrawal from a bank without an ID.
Can I see your identification?
Sure,
absolutely. Here's my license.
All right, I'm here to vote. Can I see your ID? Absolutely.
And here's how I've always voted. Again, this is before all this craziness happened. This is in New Jersey, a blue state, and I have always voted. Always. I go to my old grammar school, Union School in Rutherford, New Jersey. I go there. Hi. Could I see your ID? I show them my license. Could you sign here? And next to the place where I have to sign is a photocopy of my old signature. This is New Jersey. I sign. The old lady who's working there looks at my signature. She rips off a piece of paper. She gives it to me. I walk to the booth. I hand it to another gentleman. I close the curtain. I vote and I leave. I have always done that my entire life since I've been 18 years old. I'm just telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the problem? How is that racist? That I have to show that I live where I live and I belong where I belong, as in that Union School place. And two, that when I sign it, they look at the signature. An old woman takes a second. It takes a second. And again, they're masking that by putting John Lewis's name on this.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the race.
Right.
This is manipulation.
Sure. Listen, Joe, Ken Blackwell states it very clearly. He's talking about the America of that needed legislation like the Voting Rights Act, okay, and those areas of the country where there needed to be federal intervention, okay? We're not opposed to that, okay, when there's blatant discrimination and blatant attempts to keep Black people from voting. Voter ID has nothing to do with that. Ken Blackwell says that America no longer exists. We now live in a country where Black men and women are elected to statewide offices, and where a Black man was elected president and a Black woman is the vice president. In fact, Black turnout percentages in 2012 exceeded white turnout. What are you talking about, you Democrats? Again, sometimes we just need to talk to them like that. I'm not interested in debate. What are you talking about? States need pre-clearance from the government, from the federal government, to tell the citizens of that state, you want to vote, you need ID. We'll issue the ID for free, but you got to come to the state office and you got to get an ID. We'll make it very easy. It'll be free, but you're not voting without an ID. Everybody's got to do it. White, Black, everybody. And you know who's in favor of that, by the way? Black and Hispanic people are in favor of that.
And I want everyone to vote. That's another thing. Listen, everyone should vote. It's a duty. By the way, if you're Catholic, it's actually in the catechism of the Catholic Church.
Right.
You have to participate.
You fact about. Let's take a break real quick. We're going to come back for our last segment. You're listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Join us in the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. And that is the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. Follow Joe and I on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you see us on social media. Please hit that little bell for notifications, share the video, whatever you got to do to give us a, to expand our subscriber base and get our message out there to more people. And if you want to pitch in financially, drop a couple bucks at patreon.com/frontline with Joe and Joe. Stick around. We got one more segment. You're going to love it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Remember, everyone out there, go to crusadechannel.com. We're doing a 90-day push to increase subscribers. Okay, the goal is to be subscriber base. And if you go on the website, crusadechannel.com, hit the button that says listen free, and you're going to get 24/7 Mike Church, Rick Barrett, Crusade Channel programming, Frontline with Joe and Joe over the next, let's say, up to 90 days. And we're convinced that you're going to want to subscribe to crusadechannel.com. So we encourage all of our listeners to do just that. Having said that, Joe Resinello, I mean, Ken Blackwell really just hits the nail on the head. Let's put a finer point on that when it comes to it. This is, and the other thing is, too, let's remember, H.R. 1 is a failure. You're not going to get Joe Manchin to vote for that. He said it. Okay. He's the most powerful man in the government right now. Okay. Because what he does is going to have real effects. Okay. He said he's not voting for H.R. 1. I think there was one other piece of legislation that's going nowhere. So what's the default position of the Democrats, being that those two things failed? Let's call them all racists and then see if we could get Manchin to vote with us if we call him a racist, if he votes against this. We know their tactics. I'm telling you, Republicans and people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, by the way, they need to stiffen their spine and tell the left, we don't care if you're going to call us racist. We're not voting for that legislation. Period. Exclamation point. With that, I'm handing it over to Joe.
This is an interesting story, and I think it's an important one because it's, again, language and how people twist the language. Kim Hayes of Life News brings us this one. A United Church of Christ pastor, Jess Cast, makes some bizarre statements about abortion. I just want to give you a little taste of them. And why I bring this up is how people can twist language to basically comport with their own ideas and their own agendas. Now, again, this is a Christian pastor. This is what he says.
No, it's a she.
Oh, it's a woman.
No, it's
Jess
yeah. I know.
Okay.
See, when I sent Joe the article, I guess I didn't send the picture. Okay. If I sent you the picture, your lunch might have come up. Okay.
Fair enough.
No, Jess, whatever her name is. Jess Cast. It's a chick.
All right.
It's a chick.
This is what Jess had to say. Because of the image of God is in us, we have freedom.
Okay,
I'll buy that.
That's not controversial.
I'll buy that. Because now it gets twisted.
Now it gets crazy. Hold on. Get ready out there. Get ready for this.
Because I value life, and I believe Jesus values life, I value the choices that give us the type of life that we need. Okay, but my antennas are going up.
See, that's the thing. Choices, but freedom is the right to choose what you ought to do, not the right to do whatever you want to do. So far the antennas are going up. She's not in left field yet, okay, but she's headed there. She's headed to the Green Monster in Fenway Park. She's heading into left field right now. Go ahead, Joe.
I value thoughtfulness a lot, and I wish those who are considering the choices in front of them were honored and respected. That the government and institutions and even God doesn't have the final say over how we make the choices that are best for us.
She hit left field.
You see, again, this is slick, though. You see,
Very.
This is where, again, we're dealing, like them or not, that's like such a lawyered statement. And I read lawyered statements all day long. And sometimes I have to craft statements. You say nothing. and address an issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. That is a lawyered statement. And frankly, this is a person who is putting themselves out to be a pastor.
A Christian.
You see, this is the problem, like when we talk about truth. Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's not filtered. Jesus wasn't filtered. And I'll be honest with you, I actually think people, whether you're a prelate, a pastor, a Christian pastor, a Catholic priest, a bishop, or even just a normal person who is a-religious, can appreciate conversation that isn't filtered. Frankly, I'll say this right now. Joe and I have been doing this now for 3 years. Our success is because of that. It's common sense for common people, and it's relatable. It's relatable. And that's why we've had some success. I mean, we're not like, we're not at the top of the industry, but
we're moving along.
We're moving along. And because of that, stuff like that, regular people listen to that and they're like, you're full of crap. But it's also, I think it says something about her. And what it's basically saying is, again, you're basically twisting something through your own lens. We all have to watch that. Christ said this very clearly. It's something that, it's one of the statements that he said. He said many things that really struck me, but this one always struck me. He said, let your yes be yes and your no be no, and everything else is from the devil. I'll say it again. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, and everything else is from the devil. See, Christ was perfectly clear. He didn't use lawyered conversation and filters to speak. And that's why he was relatable. You see, we have to be like that, right? Christ is the person we're following, right? The disciple is not necessarily a believer. A disciple is a follower. We have to be like that. No filter. Now, that doesn't mean you be harsh, because Christ said the truth. What I mean by harsh is you don't bludgeon people.
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone, to use an example, is a little overweight, you don't call them fat. That's not, and then someone could say, well, it's the truth. Well, maybe it is.
But you didn't have to call the guy fat. And I'm guilty. That's why I don't do it anymore on the show.
Point, I'm just using I'm just using an example. My point is this. This is lawyered crap. And frankly, I think people have had enough of it. But it's also slick. It's slick.
Right.
And people fall for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is sad. And that's what we have in the media.
That's what we have. And let me tell you something. That's why, like, if we had a real media in this country, or a place where debates actually took place, like, I'll give you an example. In England, they still have the Oxford Union debates. Okay. Now, there's very politically incorrect people that participate in Oxford Union debates. Okay. Jordan Peterson, John Lennox, the Anglican Christian apologist, scientist, philosopher. A lot of people, we don't have that in this. It's one thing England has over us. They don't have much. Okay. But that's one thing they have over us. They still value debate. They're a basket case, just like we are, but they still value debate. We can't even talk about this woman. You can't even have an intelligent conversation with this Jess Cass, whatever her name is, because you'll be shouted down. You'll be called all sorts of names. You'll be called, of course, rigid, because any Catholic, faithful Catholic that criticizes this woman's interpretation of who Jesus Christ is, as it comes to us through Scripture, okay, has to say to her, woman, you're crazy. Seriously. Like, how do you respond? Now, again, I might not say you're crazy. I'll just point out enough things to show her you're a little off here. You're out in left field. Okay. We can't even do that in this country. And then somebody like this, Joe Resinello, this is the nefarious part. You mentioned what Christ said. Christ also said, woe to him by whom sin comes to any of these little ones. Better that he have a millstone hung around his neck and dropped in the ocean. Those are his words. Okay. This woman spreads lies, particularly, I'm sure, to young women, trying to convince them that Jesus Christ, the author of all life, is A-okay with abortion. Sorry, you can't do that as a Christian. Any stripe of Christianity, if it's at least sane, okay, has to say Christ is the author of all life. All life is created through him. We say that in the creed every week. Protestants believe that too. All life is everything was created through Christ. You cannot square abortion unless you're Raphael Warnock or Jess Cass. You can't square abortion and Christianity. You can't do it. And that's the message to you liberal Catholics out there too. Okay? I'm not just picking on them. You can't square abortion with Christianity. You cannot. Okay? But this woman tries. And she's going to try to convince young women, Joe Resinello, that what she's saying is true.
But it goes along with what we were saying earlier in the show. It's about basically bending your knee and basically changing the truth. I mean, people do that to meet their own agenda and their own needs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because what? They don't want to change. Change is hard. I mean, we've interviewed a number of people on our Veritas Catholic Network show, like John Bergsma.
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed on the Crusade Channel, actually, Scott Hahn. These were Protestants that basically changed. Do you know how hard that is to do? They lost all their friends. That's how they made their living. Like, think about that for a second. They completely turned their life upside down. It's very hard. A lot of people won't do that. But I got news for you, and this is the truth. I'm telling you this right now. I've actually thought about this actually when I listen to some voices in the Catholic media. And there's so many different voices out there. We all should be one. Catholic means universal, one voice, and it's just not the case. Do you realize that if you do get into heaven, you're lucky enough to get into heaven? I hope I am lucky enough to get into heaven. I have a long way to go. There's one voice, there's one heart, and there's one head, and it's God's. And everyone's on board. Think about that when you hear all these voices. And also, don't always assume that your voice is on board with God's. Don't assume it. Like, I say that to myself sometimes. Like don't just always assume. So my point is, one voice, one heart, one head. Every person. And we're all over the place. But how do we get to that point? Honestly, we have to pray and fast. And also, we have to be humble. You have to be willing to bend your knee. And that's uncomfortable. You have to be willing to change and turn your life upside down. And that's hard. Think about what Christ said to Peter. He said, "Oh, you will one day come after me, and someone will dress you and take you where you don't want to go." That's in many respects the walk of a Christian. I could think of many times in my life that because of my beliefs, I did something or refrained from doing something that I didn't want to do. You see, again, no agenda, no filter. Your yes is yes, your no is no.
Yeah. And that's honestly, I'm sorry, that's what's anybody who values Christianity, that's what's needed in the Christian world. We need some unity. Okay. Look, no offense to any Protestants out there. Protestantism is the definition of disunity. In the Catholic Church, we have a big problem because the hierarchy won't drop the hammer on dissenters. And those who, when the Vatican says something clearly, they say, we're not listening. And that goes back decades. That goes back to Humanae Vitae. It goes back further than that. But the thing is, but at least in modern times, it goes back to Humanae Vitae, a very clear statement from Pope Paul VI. What do you call it? Magisterial. Okay, this is the teaching on birth control. All right. You had Father Theodore Hesburgh at Notre Dame. A bunch of bishops in Canada said, we're not listening. We're not listening. A couple of weeks ago, the Vatican comes out and says, we cannot bless same-sex unions. We cannot. The church cannot. Not that we won't. We cannot. Okay. What do the Germans do? We're not listening. That's the problem. We have too much. You said it right. There's disunity. Now the church is one. Okay. The church in its supernatural element is one holy Catholic and apostolic. In its human element, a lot of dissension, a lot of Father James Martin's running around, and Father, Bishop Marx is running around. A lot of German bishops who don't want to listen when it comes to 2,000 years of church teaching. In the Protestant world, nothing but disunity. 45,000 denominations, after 500 years since Martin Luther, that's not exactly what Christianity is supposed to be. It's all disunity. And the devil is the only one
absolutely.
who laughs at all of us.
And I'll tell you what, that was one of Christ's last prayers. He knew, obviously he was God. He knew that was the case.
That's in the Gospel of John,
yes,
right?
He says that they'll all be one. And remember this, in heaven, one head, one heart, one mind. It's God's. And that requires bending the knee and changing. All of us, everyone. You see, again, but the world, that's always the battle between, the flesh and the spirit. And that's why, to be honest with you, listen, they crucified Christ. Think about it. Think about how many people. I read the Magnificat every morning, and they always feature a saint. Actually, they feature 2 a day. And to be honest with you, I can't tell you how many bishops were run out of their diocese, like exiled. How many stories about, like, over the centuries. What did they say? What did they say in the scripture? It says, Israel, you love the prophet, you stone the prophets, but then after they're killed, you what's it called? You praise them. It's just human nature. Right. That's just human nature. You see, because again, listen, to follow God and to speak the truth isn't going to always win you friends. And your life, listen, remember what he said to Peter. He said, one day someone else will dress you and you will go where you don't want to go. That's the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And this type of like preaching, and even like Christian preaching on homosexuality. And I'm not here to bash anybody, but it's very clear in the Bible.
And here's another thing, Joe. It's the arrogance. It's the hubris. You don't have no matter who you are. Because I was watching a video from Tradition, Family, and Property. Okay, that's a group that Joe and I like. Okay, I met John Ritchie up at Seton Hall. We've interviewed John Horvat a number of times on social media and at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. They're protesting when they were in Jersey a few weeks ago. Father Martin up in Wyckoff is at a local parish in Wyckoff, New Jersey, and he's going to get up there and do what Father Martin does. Okay, I think it was via Zoom. And the TFP guys were there with banners, respectful, wearing suits with their banners, and they're praying the rosary. You got to see these people coming up. One woman, I'm Christian, I love Jesus, and what you're doing is evil. And John Ritchie's telling her, what are we doing except pointing out biblical truth? That's all we're doing, is that this priest is spreading lies about homosexuality and sodomy, okay? And we support church teaching. My question again, Joe Rosano, who is anyone to say that that's not what God meant? If you want to be a Christian, I'm sorry. Homosexuality is out, just like adultery is out. You can't make an excuse and say, you know what? My wife's pregnant and I can't have sex with her, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to go have sex with somebody else. You can't do that. You can't commit sodomy. You can't steal from people. You can't lie about people. Who gives anybody the right to change God's law, Joe Rossanello? And the arrogance that goes along with the people who say, you Catholics, you traditional Catholics, you're not loving. No, we are loving because we tell people the truth about their condition, about our own condition, our own sinful conditions. It's the Father Martins of the world that are liars. He's the one who's leading souls to hell, not us. We're trying to help people by spreading the truth. And who the hell are you, by the way, to say that you're going to change God's law? Who are you?
Well, that's true. Absolutely. But also, keep this in mind too. Christ did things that were also unorthodox. He met the Samaritan woman at the well. He shouldn't have done that, but he did. You see, this is the paradox of God. You see, like, again, it's not always going along to get along, even within your group. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like in life, like God did a lot of things, as in Christ, that wasn't, like in lockstep. And he did things, obviously, that were in lockstep. Like I used the example of the Samaritan woman at the well. Ultimately, the way I look at it, it's not my show. Mm-hmm. It's God's show.
Well, that was my point to you, Joe. It's not your show. You don't make the rules. Okay? You're free. You can make a choice. You can follow the rules. You don't have to follow the rules. There are consequences to those choices, both in this world and the next. You are free to make a choice, but you're not free to change the rules. That you're not allowed to do. Let me tell you a story. A good priest used to be my wife's spiritual director. You reminded me of him because of the Samaritan woman, what you said. Okay. This priest would go down to the gay pride parade. He would go right down there and he would set up a little table and he would put a little sign on it that says, Catholic priest, sit down and talk if you'd like. And he would talk to people. He would extend. He was no liberal, wishy-washy priest either. Okay. And he got spit at, but he got mocked. He was there to extend love and truth to people because love and truth are linked, intimately linked. You can't have one without the other. Okay. That is Jesus with the Samaritan woman.
Oh, I agree.
He's going down to a place where he's not welcome to simply talk to people. I'm a Catholic priest. If you'd like to sit down and talk, I'm here for you. All right. And like I said, and then he was mocked. He's not like this other person who's saying, oh, just go out and do whatever you want. Jesus loves you. Jesus never said that.
But also,
and that's the problem with Christianity.
A priest one time, and this is the last thing I'll say, we're starting to run out of time. A priest once said to me, and I'm not mocking or criticizing people who sit in the front of the church, but he said, Jesus very rarely is found in the front of the church. Most times he's in the back and he's alone and he's broken. And if you go to him in the back, he will take you by the hand and bring you to the front. We have to be willing to go to the back of the church. And even in our own circles, that isn't always comfortable. People will look at you. People will think differently of you. But that's what Jesus did. And that's where Jesus is. And that's where we have to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why, look, that's one of the reasons why one of the things we say on this show all the time is that we're going into the breach. The breach is not a very pleasant place. Okay. Now let's be clear. Joe and I are talkers. We're what they call in Italian. We're chiacchierones. Okay. We're going to sit around and do this anyway, just around our own kitchen table. But we want to bring you into our kitchen table discussion. But that breach is necessary. That uncomfortability, getting out of your comfort zone. Okay. I don't want to do this on Sunday night. I don't want to do this Monday afternoon. There should be no need for Joe and I to do anything other than raise our kids and take care of our families. Okay. But you know what? That's why we're on the Crusade channel. That's why we do social media, because there's a need. Okay. Now, like I said, we love doing it because we love talking about these things. But at the end of the day, this is not a very comfortable place for anybody in the breach. You could lose your job. You could get doxxed. You're called a hater. You get ostracized. Somebody in your neighborhood happens to see you on social media, and all of a sudden you're going to mass and they're looking at you like you got three heads. Okay. And that'll happen, but you got to get out there. You got to get out there in the fight. All you good people out there at the Crusade channel, you know that. My church knows that. Barrett knows that. Everybody at the Crusade channel knows that. That's why we encourage all of you. Part of getting in the breach is supporting the people that are out there storming the machine gun nest. How do you do that? Go to crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, listen to all the content, and make a decision. Make your own decision. Hey, I like this content. And if you do, subscribe. Joe and I gain nothing from that. We don't say that for any other reason other than that it's true. We support Crusade Channel. We do it because what they're doing, what my church is doing, the King Dude, is valuable. Okay. And that's why we're on here. All right. And that's why Joe and I are growing. One of the main reasons Joe and I are growing and get our message out there is because we got a platform and Mike Church took a shot with us on the Crusade Channel. That's how we were able to get on the AM radio in Connecticut, Veritas Catholic Network, with our interview show. That's why our social media audience has grown significantly. Okay. These are the outlets we need to support. This is what we have to do. I'm taking money away from HBO. I don't want to give money to HBO. Netflix don't want to give money to Netflix. Hulu don't want to give money to Disney because they own Hulu. You know what I'd rather do? I'd rather throw Crusade $10 a month. I'd rather throw $10 a month to Joe and Joe. I'd rather throw $10 a month to Lepanto Institute. Okay? Michael Hitchborn. Whoever's doing what we're doing, fighting this culture war for the greater glory of God ultimately, but also so that we have a better place to live in America, all right? A better, more moral nation within which to raise our kids. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're going to continue to do what it is we're doing. So we want to thank you for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Make sure you go into the chat room, crusadechannel.com/chat, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. And wherever you see Joe and me, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere.